Luke Harris woke before dawn. The glass wall of his 80th floor penthouse overlooked Manhattan, which was breathing quietly in the pre-morning fog. He loved these hours, when the city had not yet woken up, and he was already ahead of everyone. His life was a flawlessly constructed mechanism, a private jet, luxurious estates, a billion-dollar investment fund. To the rest of the world, he was the model of the American dream. The phone rang just as he was pouring himself his first cup of coffee. On the screen was his lawyer and old friend, Daniel Bennett. Daniel's tone was cold as a blade. "Luke, we need to meet. Now." "What happened?" he asked, feeling the tension begin to tighten in his chest. "It's about the fund. And about you." An hour later they were sitting in an office where the walls were decorated with paintings worth millions of dollars. Daniel placed a thick file of documents on the table. "Here are charges of financial fraud. Falsifying reports, money laundering, participating in international schemes. Luke, this is federal. And you have an enemy who wants to destroy you. This is absurd." Luke's voice broke. "My whole life is work, transparency, honesty." Daniel sighed heavily. Honesty is a word that not everyone likes to hear. Luke felt reality begin to crumble. Behind the glass, Manhattan had already woken up, but his own world froze. The silence between them was thick and sticky, like fear. Only one question raged in his head: who framed him and why? The phone in his pocket vibrated. A message from an unknown number. "You thought your past was buried? It's time for a reckoning." He looked up at Daniel, but his friend's eyes were filled with nothing but worry. And Luke suddenly realized, from that moment on, he no longer had control of his own life. Within days, Luke's world had become a siege. Federal agents had raided his office, reporters were lurking at every exit from the building, and the hashtag #HarrisGate had exploded on social media. Television channels were playing photos of him in an expensive suit, interspersed with footage from lavish parties and charity balls. A great philanthropist or a cold-blooded swindler, the announcers asked with feigned neutrality. Daniel tried to keep him informed, but each time he brought worse news. "One of your partners, David Sloan, testified against you. He says you personally ordered the money to be hidden offshore." "That's a lie," Luke shouted, smashing his glass on the floor. "David has no proof." "He has the recordings," Daniel added quietly. "And they sound convincing." At night, alone in the penthouse, Luke ran through every detail of his business. Recordings? How? He remembered meetings with David, remembered discussing risks, but nothing criminal. And yet, deep down, he felt a cold stab of doubt. Hadn't he said something that could be taken out of context and twisted? On the fourth day, the situation escalated. His bank accounts were frozen. The fund's main investor, media mogul William Cornell, went public, declaring, "We were all duped. Mr. Harris is just a nice cover for corruption." This blow hurt especially. Cornell was not just a partner to him, almost a mentor. The one who had once believed in him was now the first to cast the first stone. And then the worst. At 5 a.m. his sister, Claire, called, all in tears. "Luke, I've been denied a medical grant for Jamie. They say it's because of your reputational risk. How could you drag us into this?" Her voice shattered the last shred of peace in him. He stood in the middle of the kitchen, holding the phone, and felt the world narrowing into a dark tunnel. He had lost his business, his money, his respect, and now his family. That evening an anonymous letter arrived. Inside were clippings from old newspapers and a photo of him, very young, standing next to a man in a dark coat. On the back was the inscription: "The truth is closer than you think. But you're not ready to hear it." Luke leaned back in his chair, his hands shaking for the first time in years. Everything he believed in was crumbling. And for the first time he thought that perhaps the real war was just beginning. It had been raining for the second day in a row. Luke was sitting in his penthouse, barely turning on the light, when there was a sharp, persistent knock on the door. He had expected anyone, reporters, lawyers, even FBI agents, but he wouldn't have seen what he saw. Standing in the doorway was a woman in her 40s, her hair wet, wearing a cheap trench coat. Her eyes dark, alert. "Mr. Harris?" she asked, not waiting for an answer, and walked inside. "My name is Mariana Vega. I used to work in the compliance department at your fund." Luke tried to remember her face, but it was no use. "And what do you want?" She pulled a slim black laptop from her bag. "I have data that will explain why all this is happening to you. Names, accounts, internal correspondence. You're just a pawn in a much bigger game." His eyes narrowed in disbelief. "Do you realize this could be a trap? If I wanted to hurt you," she said, "you'd already be in prison. I want you to know that you were framed by those you trusted the most." They sat down at the table. Copies of documents marked confidential and correspondence between Cornell and unknown high-level officials appeared on the laptop screen. Among the topics discussed was the use of Luke's fund to drain competitors and cover up political campaign financing. And there was another name that kept coming up over and over again in these files: David Sloan. "This isn't just a conspiracy," Mariana said quietly. "This is a billion-dollar operation, and you're a convenient victim. Because you're too public to be destroyed." Luke felt a cold anger mingle with relief. He wasn't crazy, this was a trap. But with this revelation came fear. Now he knew too much. "Why are you helping me?" he asked. Mariana turned away, staring out the dark window. "I used to believe in this system too. Then it destroyed my brother. And I was waiting for the moment to repay the debt." Before she left him a flash drive. "This is the key. But remember, Luke, once you start digging, there's no turning back." When the door closed, he sat there, holding the small metal carrier, and realized, he had a choice, to remain the victim or to become the hunter. Luke had not slept for 3 nights. In the darkness of the penthouse, to the endless sound of rain outside the window, he had dug through the files on the flash drive Mariana had given him. Each document was a brick in the wall surrounding the truth. Cornell, Sloan, several senators, and even law enforcement officials were part of a network that used his foundation for political games and money laundering. He understood that to make this public would mean signing his own sentence. But to remain silent would mean allowing them to destroy not only him but also others who would become the next victims. That evening he called Mariana. "We only have one chance," he said. "If we strike, it will be before they have time to cover their tracks." "This will be war, Luke," she replied. "They play without rules. Me too, if necessary." They decided to operate through an independent international media consortium that did not obey American political forces. The data transfer was to take place in an old hangar on the outskirts of Brooklyn. The night of the meeting had been quiet, too quiet. Luke stood in the darkness, clutching the flash drive in his pocket, when a hooded man stepped out of the darkness, a journalist, Mariana's contact. But other silhouettes appeared behind him. "Long time no see, Luke," he heard a familiar voice. It was David Sloan, accompanied by 2 burly guards. "You know, you could have just accepted defeat." Luke took a step forward. "I'll just accept the truth." It all happened quickly. Mariana appeared from the other side of the hangar, a smartphone in her hands, broadcasting the conversation live on an open channel. Sloan tried to snatch the device, but the journalist had already received the signal and confirmed the data. "Game over, David," Luke said, looking him straight in the eye. "And now everyone will see who you are." Police sirens and bright headlights tore through the night. Someone had called for backup, but it didn't matter now. The files were out in the open. The chain of lies began to unravel in real time. And yet, as he was led out to the car, he saw Sloane's gaze in the darkness, cold but without a shadow of fear. Luke knew that victory was only the beginning of another war. 3 weeks had passed since that night in the hangar. The story had exploded around the world. An investigation by international journalists had exposed a multi-billion-dollar network of corruption involving politicians, businessmen, and media moguls. Cornell had disappeared, Sloane had been arrested, and several senators had resigned. But for Luke, the victory had been Pyrrhic. His own reputation had been ruined forever. In the press, he remained the oligarch who saved himself by betraying others, or the corrupter who became a hero by accident. Investors had not returned, former friends had not called. His sister, Claire, had called only once to say, "Jamie got the surgery. But I still don't know who you really are." He sat on an empty beach in Florida, watching the sun set over the horizon. Mariana had arrived briefly to hand over the final documents to the International Court. Before she left him a few words. "You have freedom now. Not money, not influence. But freedom. Not everyone can carry it." Luke thought about it for a long time. He no longer had offices and boards of directors, but he had the truth, and the burden it brought. Had it changed the world? Maybe. Had it changed him? No doubt. That night, as the first stars lit up over the ocean, he caught himself thinking, wealth is not just about bank accounts, it's also about the ability to look people in the eye without shame. But is it possible to be rich and honest in a world where the system itself is built on bargaining with conscience? He didn't know the answer. And maybe that was the point. Truth rarely wins, but it always takes away peace. Sometimes all we have to do is decide whether we're willing to live with what we've done, and who we've become. Luke looked up into the dark sky, where the stars twinkled like distant signals from another world. Somewhere out there, beyond this dirty, cruel marketplace of human souls, there might be an answer. But here on Earth, there was only one thing left for him to do, to move forward, even if the path led into darkness.